Welcome back. All right, now oh, there we are. Okay. How many of you were able to take pictures? I know the orange group was able to take a picture. Fortunately, got out of there.
Completely forgot. Gold group forgot.
Gold group. Well, you know what this means, Maggie. You're all just going to have to like stay after class and do it. This, like I said, this always takes a little while. So if you did get a chance to do a group selfie screen capture, please send that to Becca. All right. So how do we define family? What'd you come up with? We're going to go through these pretty quick. So definitions of family.
We said a system that works together. They're a group of people that are not necessarily related by blood.
Okay. So your definition includes kind of, you said like work together, a system of people. Isn't that like a community or an organization?
Yeah, sure.
Well, what's the difference?
Well, I think we just mainly said it was a group of people.
Okay. Any other, thank you, Leah, other definitions of family?
Me and Lillian are taking a class right now that's like called like family systems and diversity. The first chapter is about like defining the family. So like there's the legal family, the census family, and the personal family. So legal family is like how the government would define you as like a unit. Census family is, I think, that same unit, but you have to be living together. And then personal family is like who you as yourself see other, like how you see other people being in your family.
Okay.
Regardless of blood or adoption or marriage.
Good. So thanks, Jen. So that gives us a sense that kind of the definition of family can depend on who's doing the defining. And as we walk through some of these other elements of it, we'll get kind of a sense of within personal or within governmental kind of what is the unique characteristics of family versus a community or organization or institution. So what's the function of a family?
We said that it was different depending on like who's in the family. If it's a family with like children or vulnerable people, we said the purpose is to kind of give them the skills to be able to live and to provide shelter, emotional needs, physical needs, social needs, and kind of just nourishment overall, along with a sense of safety.
Okay, so kind of in the immediate term, kind of that sense of protection and caring for folks. Okay, good. Any other functions or purposes of a family? Apologies for the lawnmower outside my room. Okay, well, let's move on. So be thinking. So as we're going through these, think sort of maybe sort of bifurcate in your head that definition, function, or whatever relative to other bodies. Like I could argue back, Jaden, that a nursing facility could do that or a shelter could do that. And so what are those sort of characteristics of a family if we're conferring that as a function? How do we know if a family is successful or if they're effective? Like I said, if we were to go, wow, she's in just such a great family. How do we know that a family is successful?
One thing we talked about in our group was that like it can like specifically can look very different across different families. But like a general like idea would just be that like there's like healthy communication and people feel safe within that family unit and feel like they can open up and talk and like just kind of like that sense of like I feel safe, I feel welcomed and that kind of thing.
Great, great. So in that sense, it's part of sort of that emotional feeling of being part of this group, the communication that the group offers, the context of closeness that the group offers. Excellent. And sometimes, again, if we flip that around and we go, that family is dysfunctional, right? That might mean, oh, sorry.
Another.
Sorry, I had to move. There was a lawnmower. Go ahead. Sorry.
Another good point to a successful family is like being transparent with each other and setting boundaries and then respecting those boundaries as well.
Good. Excellent. Excellent. So you're getting an idea of processes, and we'll talk about those. Let's see. We'll go down to influences. What influences that family's well-being? The communication, the sense of closeness, the sense of safety, the nurturing of each other. One of the functions of family oftentimes can be looked at as the socialization of children. Like one of the big things that a family does is it basically confers when someone was mentioning about gaining skills, so a big function that your parents are doing is producing the next generation, right? And socializing you with morals and social skills and protecting and nurturing you and all of that. So what are some of the influences on a family, both internally and externally, that are both positive or potentially a challenge? Anyone?
We talked about just like overall stress, like negatively affecting the family, and in particular, like financial stress. I feel like that's like a common burden on families, and then like figures of authority in the family just if they like feel stressed about money, then they can maybe just like there's a more tense atmosphere around the household.
Yep, absolutely. And that challenge about money can be an internal stressor, but it can also be an external stressor if there is something like a job layoff, right? Or an economic downturn like in 2008 or something like that that affects the larger economy that then brings that stressor into the family. Good, so that's an excellent example. And then finally, how do families change over time? Are we static, or in what ways do we change?
In our group, we discussed that like as you grow older, like family members move away, you go off to college, and so like your family dynamic shifts a lot with like every person who like possibly like leaves the nuclear family at that time. So that can definitely.
So how do things change when a family member leaves? So you graduate from high school, whatever, you quote unquote go off to college. How does that change a family?
Is that to me or is that open to the class?
It's open, but if you'd like to respond, Nicole, you are more than welcome.
Well, I mean, like if you have an older, like the oldest sibling, typically the first to leave the family, if they were relied on a lot by the parents to like maybe help out around the home, have a job that partially their paycheck was going towards the family to continue on with like financial stressors that we were discussing earlier, then that can just like shift the family dynamic and put more stress on possibly the next oldest child, or just the family having to adjust to finding out new ways to compensate for the ways that they had, or even like in a positive way of just like a person who was in your home for 18 years is now out of it. So right. Of course your life is going to change a little bit.
Right. And that's a positive thing because again, and I say this in my child development class, believe me, as your parents, like we don't want you living with us when you're 40. I mean, if you do, that's lovely. And more young adults are living with their parents. My 27-year-old was back with us for a month, but kind of, again, that whole idea is launching and starting a new generation and all of that. So that could be that's a very positive thing for a family. You're seeing your kid launched. So excellent. So just in this little baby discussion, you've got an idea of some of these key elements of families. And so when we talk about family systems, we talk about family roles, and symbolic interaction is a theory behind families. We'll talk about the social construction of families, family development. This will all and should all make sense. Then, like I said, the Olson et al. Chapter really grounds this nicely. Okay, I'm going to go back to, there we go. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, get back to the PowerPoint, which is now no longer to be seen. So it's a screwy kind of thing. There we go. Now I'm going to do this again. And we're back. Okay. All right. Okay, so play from current slide. Okay, so we have a variety of functions for the family. You know, we have an economic function for family, again, to socialize, generative function, about providing a value system of beliefs. Again, when we think about the family as being the great socializers of a generation moving forward, certainly whatever kind of, you know, cultural, you know, that transmission of culture within your family, the idea of religious beliefs, the sense of morality, of, you know, how we treat each other, things like that. And this communication is done through our roles, through our relationships, through our communication, our sense of cohesion, and our sense of flexibility. So in the chapter, in the Olson et al. Framework chapter, you will see it discusses 6 theories. And believe me, as a feminist, it is not that I don't believe in the feminist framework. I obviously do, similar with family strengths. But for our purposes, we're going to narrow this down, again, because my interest is having a groundwork on which to then look at technology. So we're going to focus on these 4: family systems, family development, symbolic interaction, and social construction. And so with this idea of the family as a system, you know, and Leah mentioned this too, when we think about individuals within the family, we operate as a system. We interact with each other, and from the standpoint of an open system, right? We are, every individual in that family is sensitive to influences from the outside. And as we are influenced, we interact with each other. And then the influence from one person goes on to another family member, and vice versa, and through reciprocity. So a great example of this is, say, in work and family. So I go to work, I'm stressed by work, I come home, I'm frustrated, I am just tired, I don't want to interact, my kids need help with their homework, I'm terse, I'm mean, my child feels really bad that they've been neglected, their self-esteem goes down, they go back to school and they don't do well at school, partly because no one has helped them with their homework, but also because they feel worse about themselves emotionally, right? Then I get a call from the school, and then I go, and then it just can, you know, one thing after the other. So when we talk about an open system, we're talking about a system of individuals that interact with each other, that through reciprocal action affect each other. So even in a hierarchical system, right? So that even if we see parents as being sort of authority figures, believe me, parents are as much affected by their children as they affect children. So there's very much this idea of interactivity between family members, and then each one of those members is influenced by a wider system, a wider context. And our understanding of an open system is then that family also then has influences out onto a wider system. When we look at a family system, we also are looking at certain processes that help to convey how that family functions. And the 3 that we talk about in this case are family cohesion, family communication, and family flexibility. And certainly in the examples we've just been talking about, we talk about families being close, offering that context of emotional closeness and support to each other, families staying together. If we think about COVID, we think about other hurricanes or, you know, economic downfalls, you know, families can stay together, right? But they need to have a certain sense of flexibility and not remain the same. Because if there is an external influence on that family that is creating the need for change, an 18-year-old leaves the nest, right, goes on to college. If the family doesn't flex and doesn't start to absorb some of the roles of, say, that 18-year-old, the family is going to have some challenges. So in this section, we're also thinking about these 3 key processes that help families function. And then we also think of these systems that also help that embody the family. So their belief system, the extended family system, so grandparents, relatives that are part of their culture, and then a social system of resources and supports for that family. So these are just some of the sociocultural characteristics. Again, so this is just very quick on family systems theory. You see this picture of this wonderful little family in a hospital. When we go through this in a class, when I have the longer slide set, a lot of times I'll just, as a class, we'll look at this individual family and we'll attach these different theoretical principles onto our token family or our family, and we would give them names and all of that. So if it helps you to hold a particular family in mind, you can take a snapshot in your brain of this particular family, lovely as they are. So family systems theory, again, this idea of an ongoing system of interconnectivity. That interconnectivity and that interdependence is key. So we're not talking about, and this is one of the things that is different than, say, a community or an institution, or, if there are individuals who have very minimal interaction with each other. Yes, at some extent they are influencing each other, but not in the way that a family system would, that has more ongoing day-to-day contact, communication, and that kind of thing. This has evolved from family systems theory, where again we look at this idea of interdependence, but we also look at this idea of wholeness. So for those of you who might be from the child development perspective or more from a human development perspective, one of the big differences between that field and the family field, and many of us in the family field also study and teach child development, I do myself, is that we understand the individual and the development of that individual, but we also look at that individual as part of a family, and a family alone as what we call a unit of analysis, because every family has its own characteristics based on the characteristics and the dynamics and the interactive workings of its own family members. So we're not just looking at, the socio-emotional development of a 3-year-old. We're looking at the socio-emotional development of that 3-year-old within a context of the 3-year-old's parents, the 3-year-old's culture, the 3-year-old's family life, the other siblings, possibly grandparents, economic well-being, that kind of thing, as a context for the development of that 3-year-old. Okay, so we're looking at families, not individuals. So these are our 3 key processes that we're looking at. So the first one is on family cohesion, and that's that emotional closeness that family members feel for each other. And here we're looking for a good sense of balance. We don't really want, let's see, is this my next slide? Yeah, so in family cohesion, we want a good connected or cohesive system with a sense of balance of, a nice balance of separateness and togetherness, right? When we're kind of feeling too together, it can feel a little imbalanced, or what we would call enmeshed, where, individuals within the family are challenged to have unique identities. There's kind of this groupthink, whatever, but our concern and why we sort of put these as, and from a sense of unbalance, is then what does that mean to not only the functioning of the family? Generally, if a family is more enmeshed, it's going to be harder for them to be flexible, right? And also for the individual well-being of the family members. And if we think about one of our functions of a family is sort of growing the next generation, one of our aims, one of my aims as a parent, your parents' aims, is your own individuation, right? Is for you to become your unique self, a whole self, socially, emotionally, physically, cognitively, but that your identity is your own. Yes, it does relate to your individual family in terms of your culture and your background and your morals and possibly your political beliefs and things like that, but they are uniquely your own as an adult, right? And so if a family, say, is too together, is too enmeshed, then our concern is potentially an impact on that individual's development, right, as an adult, as an example. On the other hand, if a family is too separate, too disengaged from each other, then, you know, there's not that closeness, that sense of support, especially that communication that can lead to a stronger sense of development for individuals in the family and their sort of connection with each other at times of need. So our next one is on family flexibility. And you know, and Nicole gave us a great example when the child leaves the home, right? That we need when families are hit with something day-to-day life, day-to-day hassles, right? They need to be able to flex. Also big things that happen. There needs to be that sense of flexibility. And then finally, and I've got a slide on that, and then finally communication is that sharing of ideas, information, feelings with each other. When there's that emotional distance, it's very hard for family members to really understand and support each other. There's also the, and this isn't just verbal, right? This is also through nonverbal, through gestures, through actions. Family flexibility. So one of the things is, again, is that ability of the system to be both stable and to evoke change. And especially, again, when we look at the family as an open system that is very much in receipt of influence from the outside, very much then that family needs to be able to flex. They need to be able to figure out how do we continue to thrive, to communicate, to stay close, to do our jobs, to give care to each other, to support ourselves as family members, as parents. How do we continue to nurture the development of our children when we are also under exposure to the outside, to an economic downfall, to a hurricane, to needing for all of us to come back to live under the same roof when you know, our adult children were launched. So again, it's a characteristic, it's a healthy characteristic for families to be flexible. The other day on Tuesday, I was mentioning about this idea of an ecological approach to understanding technology, and we were looking at this with our own use of Zoom and looking at our individual use and our use as a classroom, and then a wider institutional you know, influence and impact on our technology use. So I began to introduce this ecological approach, and so it comes back here again when we're thinking of the family as a system. So we think of the family you know, sort of at the center. They're very much influenced by their nearby or their more proximal social system between the school. You know, one school in a neighborhood is not opening because of COVID. Another one is opening with smaller class sizes, right? So that's very much going to affect the family as a system interacting with the family's work system, right? Neighborhood businesses being open, healthcare being open. So you can get a sense of that sort of systemic interaction. And then the wider community system between government, justice, and so forth. So again, just that idea that external influences and then the family as an influence. And then these systems of belief, right? So we have the extended family, relatives, kin, other family members that connect to the family, offering them support and influences and resources. And from a critical lens, we see that You know, support to a family can be positive, and we oftentimes think of positive as support as positive, but believe me, support can also be negative, right? So that if there are expectations, sort of ties that come along with those offers of support, that's not necessarily positive support, right? Especially if it brings stress to a family member, if it's say a young mother who is 16 and she's living with her partner's you know, family, and they're just telling her everything what to do with that baby, right? Maybe that's stunting her own developmental growth. Maybe that's stunting her ability to, you know, give care to the child. On the other hand, it might be very, very positive. But I just want you to, you know, sort of hold in mind that when we talk about social support, that it's oftentimes viewed as a very positive thing, but it can be negative at times as well. Again, that economic, social, and educational social system that families are part of, and then certainly their spiritual beliefs, and that doesn't necessarily mean religiosity, but it is also the family's belief system. And then, you know, this idea of threats to family functioning, especially from the outside. And again, this just speaks to families' need to be flexible, to have good communication with each other, and to stay strong through their sense of connectivity. So again, just to refresh on all of that. And so, and as I'm zooming through this, pardon the pun, but as I'm zooming through these, and again, you have the much fuller slide set, you know, like hold in the little recesses of your brain technology, because this is all general family stuff, right? And then, and so my very last slide, I'll ask you to be thinking about applying some of this to our introduction of technology. Okay, so, so then you can reflect back on your own family structure. So now that you have some of these general principles, and I know a lot of you in the family area, you've already done this tons of times in your classes, but early on in your groups, as you were talking about family, you know, you can reflect back on your discussion on yourselves, and then think about, you know, structure, what, you know, influences are on my family, and especially, you know, what kinds of things have affected my family's sense of cohesion, my family's sense of flexibility. I will tell you that young adults are now more likely to be living with their families of origin at the highest rate since World War II, or since the Great Depression. So it's becoming more of a norm, and there's tons of reasons for it. So just that little fun fact. So the second one is the family development framework. And our basic idea of family development, as it is with human development, is change over time. And so as a sort of as an organic, or as a system of interactive individuals, we are all humans, right? And that 3-year-old doesn't stay a 3-year-old. That it goes from, you know, that 3-year-old becomes 13, becomes 23, becomes whatever. So individuals within the family are changing. And as that 3-year-old is changing, of course, the parents and the adults in the family are changing. You know, one of the things in human development we oftentimes don't talk about is adult development. And oftentimes in our family world, we put so much focus on sort of the care and well-being of young children and teenagers and that sort of thing, that we completely forget that as adults, parents are changing too. And I guarantee you that whatever age your parent was when you were born, they are a very changed person. Being your parent completely changed them, right? So as we look at the development of each of these individuals in a family, then we also think, as we're thinking of a family as a whole, right, that how they change over time. And oftentimes those changes as a whole system, and those changes within the family because of individual development, can be very challenging, right, to the family's well-being. And so, as I have here in red, a member's efficiency in completing the tasks directly impacts the development of the various family members. So it's it's a wonderful kind of reciprocity where the healthier the family is going to be, the better environment it is for raising individuals, and the better that individual is at going along sort of a normative developmental timeline, then that it's going to impact the development of the other family members. So we want healthy humans, but we also want healthy families, right? And I have this nice poster there from AARP that shows how role changes over time, which then brings us to the next, oops, sorry, I gotta back now. The next theory, which is on symbolic interactionism, and it sounds really fancy, but mostly what we're talking about is roles. And through our enactment of roles, right, we act in a symbolic way of carrying out those roles. And so, and with those roles come certain expectations. So an example of this is, say, if you have, maybe you're the oldest child and you've got younger siblings. Over time, you may have conferred that role of caretaker to your younger siblings. You may have conferred the role of advice giver. You may confer the role of, it's up to you to teach your sister how to wear makeup or whatever, right? And so there are these roles that are conferred on us, both by society and their expectations for what we do, but also from our interactions with each other as family members. And we have down here role taking, as well as role making, because again, so our example of the 18-year-old, the 18-year-old leaves, the next sibling in line might take on some of those roles that the 18-year-old had. And that's all a good thing if the family can be flexible. And then our final one is the social construction framework. And this is the idea that our understanding of the world is very much informed by our interaction with the world in a social way. So, and I have a picture there from Mean Girls, because if you've ever been part of a peer group, it's a great example of social construction, right? You learn how to be and operate by your interaction with your social group. And so you learn how to dress, you learn how to talk, you learn how to behave, that kind of thing. And so, and the same thing can be said of families. And so part of the reason that I want to include social construction as a theory with technology is that, as you can see from these pictures, these are TV families. And through technology, right, technology through watching Netflix, through watching streaming television, from getting messages through audio, through podcasts, through iTunes, through things like that, we continually are getting messages from our society about the way that we as a society operate. And that also includes how families operate, what families should look like, who should be in a family. And as we can see from these pictures, our own social construction of a family has definitely changed over time. From the 1960s, with our black and white picture there, father knows best, with, you know, dad is the breadwinner, mom at home wearing pearls, never happened. Mom at home wearing pearls, and then the three adoring children, right? To a family, more currently modern family that is large, diverse, multiple extended family members, gay, straight, multicultural, you name it. So that's our final one. It's just this idea of media representations, that our idea of a family can very much be informed by our interactions or what we view on the media, to the point of leading us to question if somehow we are different. So, and as we move through the course and we talk about our interactions with social media, and you saw that a bit in the trailer for the social thing on Netflix, right, is that what does that mean to a 12-year-old whose primary social construction of being a 12-year-old is what she sees from her interaction on TikTok or on Instagram or something like that, if that then can lead to her questioning of her own self. So these are my questions if we had time in a group. I know we're a couple minutes over, so I'll send these out to you, because I know you don't have anything else doing this weekend except to think about this class. But what I'd like you to do, as you're going through the readings and you're doing the quiz and all of that in preparation for Tuesday, as we talk more specifically about from these basic family theories, then what are some of our newer applied theories that then bring in technology, is to think about technology with these theories from the standpoint of the introduction of technology to a family, right? What does it mean as something positive, maybe for communication, but what does it also mean for disrupting family cohesion, or possibly positive for family cohesion, right? Why would it need that the family would need to be flexible around this? Consider family roles. How do these play out with the child getting a smartphone? What about family development? How does it influence the family's adaptation to the child's having a smartphone? And then finally, social construction. What is our social construction of childhood, and has that changed not only from what we see on technology, but how technology has been introduced into our house or into our families? So those are the big, broad questions that I'll leave you with. And again, no worry to write those down. I will send those to you in an announcement, and this will be on Canvas. Okay. Whew. So that was my quick zoom through on Zoom of those final family theories. Again, I think once you get into it, and for those of you in the family world, a lot of this should make a lot of sense anyway. I don't think it's rocket science. I think it makes sense because it's our lived experience. But certainly, I think theory can be one of those things that can be maybe misunderstood, or basically it's this. As you're walking through this module, please, please, please let me know what questions that you have. If there's anything of this that doesn't make sense, and I'll try to help you through it, okay? Whew. All right, well, we are a few minutes over, so I will just stop talking and wish you all just a fabulous weekend. And we'll be online, we'll be on over through Canvas and all of that. And I hope whatever you end up doing this weekend is fun, and please take care of yourselves. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you. Oh. Oh no, was Audrey really obnoxious? Could you hear? Could you not hear because of her?
I'm on mute. A little bit.
Oh, Puppy has an upset stomach. Well, she doesn't. That's just her.
She just snores. Oh.
Oh. Oh. I was afraid of that, but I had to move, and I knew, and when I'm at my desk, right, then she can't sit on the chair with me. And then, but then when I move, then she jumps up, and this is where I can't mute. Oh, well.
Right. I mean, I think it was fine, but.
Well, give me a high sign or something. I'll have to have my phone here next to me. You can text me if something's happening. Like I should,
Okay.
Get rid of Audrey. Well, that could be harder, but.
No, she's cute. I think people just thought like someone had fallen asleep and like started snoring on camera, and then they realized that it wasn't, and it was your dog. So I think originally they were just trying to figure out if someone was like snoring on camera.
Oh, honey. No, you can tell that she's in deep sleep when she gets into the snoring.
Oh yeah, Ruby will twitch. She'll bark